I'm guessing that I might be accused of clickbaiting you, but to be honest, it wasn't just to get you to listen to this podcast. My desire, honestly, is to push out your boundaries on your understanding regarding this ancient city of Sodom and its relevance for those of us living 4,000 years on the other side. And to be honest, to also get you thinking outside the box on what God's hierarchy of moral misdeeds really looks like. Beloved, it's bigger than any political agenda and a whole lot different than anything you'll hear from the Pew Research Center. Now, for this episode of The Road to Shalom, I'm not only taking you outside the box, we're going outside the country. You're my very welcome guests at the largest school in the world for children of missionaries. We're headed to Asia to get a new definition of the word heresy and a new look at Sodom. Make sure your seats and your tray tables are in the upright and locked position. What we're going to do each day, we're going to take about 30 seconds. I'm going to ask you a question, but I really want you to ponder it. I want you just to talk to someone next to you and come up with an answer to the question. The first question we're going to look at is this. What is a heresy? Take about 30 seconds. Okay, time's up. Heresy. Give me a definition, somebody. Jan.
Somebody who tells people about false doctrine.
Okay, no, that's a heretic. All right? So if you take what they talk about, you're saying a heresy is what?
Doing that.
Doing what? A heretic is someone who spreads heresies. So what's a heresy? Okay, you work on that. All right, someone else. Heresy, what's a heresy? Yes?
Isn't heresy like someone who goes against God's law?
It's not a person. Yes, sir?
Sort of like blasphemy, but a little different.
Sort of like blasphemy, but a little bit different, all right? We have to work with the definition of blasphemy. We're not going to go there. Yes, ma'am? False teaching. Yes. Okay? A heretic is a false teacher, so you're on the right path. That's good, all right? We're going to use a unique definition for everything we talk about. This is the definition we're going to use. Heresy is truth out of balance. It's truth out of balance. That means there's two things that are true about the heresy. One of them is what? The heresy in itself, if we use this definition, is what? It's true. Second thing is that it's out of balance. It's too big. It occupies too much of my thinking. It's too big a part of my life. That's going to be our definition. Heresy is truth out of balance. When being too right can be wrong. In other words, having something that's true, but it's out of balance. All right? Question of the day. Question of the day. You ready for this? What words, let's limit it to 2 or 3, come to your mind when you hear the name Sodom? 30 seconds.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Let's get some estrogen going over here. One of you ladies. Saddam Hussein. Let's go. Yeah, that would have gone right through your spell checker. So just a minor difference of vowels, but that's okay. Yes, ma'am. A wicked city. One more. Death, destruction, and a little bit of mercy. All right? Here's heresy number 4. That God judged Sodom for the sin of homosexuality. That God judged Sodom for the sin of homosexuality. All right? That's the heresy. Heresy is truth out of balance. And this heresy is in the church. Remember, the heresies are in the church. They're not in the culture. The culture's in the church, but these heresies are in the church. All right, let's take this apart. Number 1, there are only 2 narratives in the entire Bible that deal with homosexual behavior. Only 2. It's not a big deal to God. It doesn't get a lot of ink to God. All right, and when I say it's not a big deal to God, I don't mean it's not important to God. I just mean when you start to look at the hierarchy of what's important to God, which we're going to this morning, this one doesn't get a lot of ink. There's only 2 stories in the whole Bible, and they're both in the Old Testament. Genesis 19, a story you're familiar with. It may be the story that colored your understanding of your definition for the word Sodom. The rest of them kind of were working on this. It's the visit of two angels and God. They visit Abram by the oaks of Mamre, all right? And they come and talk to him. And they tell him what they're going to do in 18. And then 19, they go into the city. Lot is living in the city. Real important. He's living there. Earlier in Genesis, it says he pitched his tent near Sodom. You get to 19, he's, sold it, upgraded like we do in America. Now he's got a house. The word house shows up twice. He's living in Sodom. And it's the story where the city of Sodom gathers around him and, he wants to throw out his daughters and all this stuff. And the angels pull him back in. They strike him with blindness. And you know that story. That's Genesis 19. The second account of homosexual behavior in the Old Testament is in Judges 19. And it occurs within Israel. It occurs within the tribe of Benjamin. And there's almost a near genocide that gross story where the guy throws his concubine out and she gets basically raped all night. And then she dies on his threshold, puts her on his donkey, takes her home, slices her up into 12 pieces and FedExes her around the nation and says, we've got to do something about this. All right? That's that story. But those are the only two narratives in the entire Old Testament that deal with homosexual behavior. God never condones it. Third thing, and this is what I want you to see. Sodom's problem was much larger than its gay population. God judges groups for a condition, not because they hit some little top 10 sin of his. That's real important. You see this all the way through the movement of God's people into Canaan. The destruction of the Amorites and the Ammonites and the Hittites and all these people wasn't because they won the sin lottery and God said, oh, all right? It was because they, as a people group, had gotten to a place. He talks about the wickedness being filled up, and then he judges them. It's the same if you read through the book of Revelation. It's very much the same, all right? And here's what I want to do. I want to spend some time unpacking that passage in Genesis 19 and going a little bit outside of it, help you understand what was really wrong with that population, all right? First of all, if you read Genesis 18 and 19, you'll see that as the angel of the Lord is talking to Abram, he tells him that there has been an outcry that has come up to God. And they said, we're here to investigate that, to check out what that outcry is. And the word that's used here, you got to get this. The Hebrew word that's used is a Hebrew word that means a cry of distress. It's a plea for help. There was a cry of distress coming out from Sodom and Gomorrah to God. Somebody was praying. As pagan or backwards or primitive as it was happening. All right? Now, if you read the story, you got to be really careful. Because if you read the story in chapter 19, the way that Moses writes this, and it's so different. Ancient Near East is not into details like we are. But if you read it in Genesis 19, it sounds like every single male in the city was wicked and was gay. That's the way it sounds. But we know that's not the case for two reasons. Number one, Lot had two daughters that were betrothed to two men that lived in Sodom. And they were supposed to come along. And I refuse to believe that Lot and his wife were sitting around one night and he said, honey, I'm not really excited about these guys, being gay and all. But hey, it's the best our girls are going to do. So I think rather than have these really high standards, I think we just need to let it go. And you and I will get the retirement that we need. Someone to take care of us when we're old. I don't think that happened. I think these guys were straight. And there's also some other people in the city that apparently are crying out to God. All right? We have to be careful with that. The half-brother of Jesus, a guy named James. He's one of Jesus' half-brothers. He wrote a book called the Book of James. And James uses the same word family in his book in chapter 5 when he talks about the poor crying out to God because of the wages that are being withheld from them by wealthy Christians. All right, now file that away because that's real important. All right. So what was the sin of Sodom? If we're going to say it's a heresy that it wasn't homosexuality, what was it? We don't get the answer to this until 1,500 years after Lot. And there's actually 5 sins of Sodom, not 1. And it's in the book of Ezekiel. Look at this passage. Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. They were haughty and did an abomination. Abomination, that's our little word right there. All right? Before me, so I removed them when I saw it. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food. We're going to take a look at what these 5 sins were. What was the guilt of Sodom? What was the guilt of Sodom? First one was pride. What is pride? Pride is spending all my free time thinking about myself. That's really what it is. It's spending all my time thinking about myself. One other thing about pride, just for those of you that are proud to know this. Proud people have a tiny world, and they occupy most of the space in it. A tiny world produces 2 things. A tiny world produces 2 things, arrogance and apathy. Arrogance is I know everything there is to know about the sphere in which I live, and apathy is I've experienced everything there is to experience in the world where I am. And I'll just tell you this. If I'm around someone my age, or even someone your age for that matter, if I'm around anybody and they're real kind of cocky about what they know, I immediately dismiss them as not knowing much. Socrates said, one thing I know, and that's that I know nothing. And he had a fairly high ACT score, as far as I know. A truly educated person is humble because they understand how little they know in comparison to how much there is to know. A proud person, he's just kind of village idiot. All right? Second, gluttony. Gluttony. That's what he said. Excess of food. The word means gluttony. It means eating food I don't need, but others do. I could talk for a long time about this. I can summarize it in one statement. In America, we have diet food for our pets. Do I need to say any more? There's a veterinarian 3 blocks from my house. When we were driving to the airport, there was a marquee up there where you can buy birthday cakes and clothing for your pets. They have doggy daycare. There was an article in our paper about a woman that took out health insurance on her pet. There's doggy psychologists. Which I mean, if any of you are looking for a really great job, I'm thinking that would be it. Because you know the pet's not going to go home and say, you know, that really didn't work for me today, you know. But gluttony, you guys, gluttony is the idea of eating food that I really don't need. We're going to talk about this idea of excess as we go through this. Leisure is investing my surplus time in myself. That's what leisure is. It's not wrong to rest. God did. He told us to. God was real big on rest. He wanted the land to even get a break. Matter of fact, part of the judgment on Judah in 6th century was because they didn't give the land any Sabbaths. I used to do a little project with my seniors. I gave them a sheet of paper with 7 little blocks in it, and on the front it said, you have won the lottery. And a check for $86,400 will arrive in your bank account every single day of your life. There's only one catch. By midnight of that day, you have to have spent every penny. Has to be gone in order for the next check to come. And I said, map out what you would do with the money over a 7-day period. And they had a ball with this. Got very creative, you know, detailed ledgers and all this sort of stuff. And they spent most of the money on themselves. Bottom line is that's where it kind of ended up. And then the day that they handed all of their projects in, which is maybe a little cruel, but they handed all their projects in, and I looked at them just before the bell rang. and I said, God gives you 86,400 seconds a day. Are you spending it or are you investing it? And investing the money would have been spending it, the excess, on others rather than themselves. Does that make sense? That's an issue of time. I wish I could tell each of you that you've got a wonderful life ahead of you. Truth is, and I don't say this morbidly, I've just been alive long enough, and I had 14 students die in 14 years from everything. Given birth to their third child, had a girl die on her honeymoon, aspirated a tablespoon of water sitting on a rubber inflatable thing while her husband was snorkeling below her on her honeymoon. He came up and she was dead. Now, when you get married, you don't expect to bring your bride home in a bag. And that's basically what happened. 2 suicides, car wrecks, everything you can imagine. Cancer. And the truth is, and I say this with a great deal of sobriety, that there's a very likelihood that before those of you that are 9th graders graduate, somebody in this room may not be around. That's just the way it happens. Car accidents or that sort of stuff. And so your time is not a given. We get all bent out of shape because we've got this distorted view that everyone's supposed to get 75 years of fairly good living. And so when children or people in their 20s, God decides that He wants to have them and spend time with them, we have a hard time with that. But your time is a gift. And what you do with it, you want to outlast you. 4th one, and the big one, I think. I think this is where the outcry came from, beloved. Neglecting the poor. What is neglecting the poor? It's refusing to share what I have too much of with someone who has too little of the same thing. It wasn't that they were neglecting the poor by not doing anything for them. It was that they had time, they had resources, they had everything they needed, and they chose not to help. And I really believe that this was the outcry because it's totally consistent with James, same word, same notion, same idea, all right? And the last one was abominable acts, and that was really not following God's design for sex. Primarily, that's what it was. The Hebrew word that's used here is used all through Leviticus 18 for every kind of weird sexual behavior you can imagine. Stuff that's really too gross to talk about in this group, all right? But it's also the same word that's used for burning your kids on the altar of Moloch. The bottom line, which someone said in here, was that Sodom was they were really down near the end. Okay, that's that. All right, but let's do the math on something. I want to push this in a little further. This may hurt a little bit. There are only 8 references in the entire Bible that deal with homosexual behavior and or homosexuals. 4 in each of the Old and New Testament. And to be honest with you, the 2 that deal with homosexual behavior are both hypothetical. They're in Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20. And both of them say if. All right? So it doesn't get a lot of ink. Now compare that with this. There are 300 references in the Bible to the poor, to the fatherless, to the weak, to the afflicted, to widows, and to orphans. 300. Nearly 80 of them are in the New Testament. So this isn't just an Old Testament concept. To God, this is a huge thing. To God, the poor are a people group, not a social problem. They are a people group, not a social problem. What do I mean? How can I say that? Because God understands. God, because He's the author of His plan for the fullness of time to turn Genesis 3 on its head, not just get all of us back in the pool so we can swim once we got kicked out, but to restore nature's relationship with itself and the relationships of people with each other and the relationship with God and every area of human existence that's been affected by sin. Do you understand why in Revelation it says there's no more crying, there's no more, and the Greek word there means to cry out. It's not weeping. It's like, ah! It's that kind of thing. God said there's none of that. There's no death, there's no dying, there's no sorrow. There's never going to be a funeral procession in eternity. I doubt if anyone will even wear black. Why? Because there's no sin there. And God understands that the reason there are orphans, fatherlessness, is the result of sin. Either through death, which is the fruit of sin, or desertion, which is the fruit of sin. Widowhood's the same. And so God looks at them as a people group, a distinct people group. How do I know that? Because many of the references, God doesn't talk about a poor person. He talks about the poor, the orphans, the fatherless. And I don't know of very many churches in the U.S. that target this group specifically as an unreached people group. And much of Christianity, where I come from, has degenerated into goods and services back to us. We really think that Christianity is for Christians. And beloved, it's not. It's for the glory of God and the needs of the world. We're going to talk about that a little bit more this morning and tomorrow. This is going to even push this in a little further. God equates. He doesn't say this is a fruit. He equates intimacy with Him with care for the poor. Where do I get that? I get that from a passage that's in the book of Jeremiah 22, 15, and 16, for those of you that are taking note. And he's talking to Jehoaz, who is the kind of the wicked son of good King Josiah. And he says, does it make you a king to have more and more cedar? Did not your father do what was right and just? He defended the cause of the poor and the needy, and all went well. Now listen to this. He defended the cause of the poor and the needy, and all went well. Is not this what it means to know me, declares the Lord? Is not this what it means to know me? Jehoaz, your dad, was involved with the needs of the poor. That's knowing me. And you will find this theme virtually in every book of the Bible. And so this is a big thing to God. I want you to get that. I want you to understand it. Well, how did we get to this? How did we get to the place where we don't have it right? Number one, I think we bought into the fact that salvation is just God getting me back in the pool. And my job now is to let everyone get a chance to swim. As opposed to seeing God's plan of redemption being enormous, covering all of the things that sin has vandalized. Second, we've democratized grace. We've democratized grace. What do I mean by that? Democracy has to do with individual rights and freedoms and privileges. And we've turned the grace of God into something that's all about what God wants to do for me. And I'm His child, and He loves me. And He's got stuff He wants to do for me. But most of the stuff, you guys, that God wants to do for you is going to be found, listen to this is enormous, is going to be found in the context of what He wants to do with you. And God's passion is taking the beneficiaries of grace and turning them into agents of redemption, of being a conduit of grace, not a container. We're supposed to be pipes, not pots, conduits, not containers. God has people in your life. He's got people in your life that He wants you to take the things you have more of than you need to invest in them. Last one. We've also forgotten that Jesus connected inseparably His own messiahship with the poor. What do I mean? When He gave what's called His Nazareth Manifesto in Luke chapter 4, He stood up in the synagogue in Nazareth, opened the scroll, rolled to Isaiah. No verse numbers, chapter numbers, just long scroll. Finds Isaiah 61, what we call Isaiah 61, and reads it. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because the Lord has anointed me. Hebrew word is Mashiach. It's where we get Messiah. The Greek is Christos. It's where we get Christ. He takes this messianic statement. He's anointed me to do what? To bring good news to the poor. You can't tell good news to the poor. You have to bring it. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. Jesus connected His messiahship. Part of His mission was to seek and to save the lost. But He's driven. The Greek word is splagnizomai. He's driven. He's moved from His inside out to touch, to heal, to open the eyes of the blind, to feed the hungry, and ultimately to die on the cross. But not just to die on the cross. Jesus uses Jubilee language in that synagogue. The year of Jubilee. The year when all debts were canceled and real estate went back and the land sat fallow for 3 years. Something the Jews had never, ever once done. And I think Jesus is standing there and he says, it's going to be fulfilled in the church. And it was good news to the poor. The gospel was good news to the poor. What's that got to do with us? Number one, where are the poor and widows and orphans in your theology? As you're thinking through the Bible and putting together what you believe as a Christian, please create a space and fill it with truth about God and what he thinks about this people group. Second one, if you were going to share the gospel with someone, would it be good news to the poor? If it's not, you have to go back and look at if you've got the whole gospel. All right? Third thing, do we have a recreational or vocational approach to ministry, to service? And let me bring something from the States. In America, the American church is real good at doing short-term mission trips. But it's not a lifestyle of serving. I'm not talking about missions necessarily, of serving. Please consider serving being your lifestyle, because it was the lifestyle of Jesus. Last one. Which surprise will be mine at the judgment seat of Christ? What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Both groups were surprised. You understand that? In that Matthew 25, I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was thirsty and you gave me the food, and I was in prison and you visited me. And they both said the same thing. Lord, when did we? So they both were surprised. The difference was one group did it all the time. And so when it happened that they did it to Jesus, they didn't know it. Another group didn't do it all the time. And they said basically, oh man, if we'd have known it was you, we'd have done it. And Jesus says that's precisely the point. It wasn't. Okay, we're 16 episodes into this Road to Shalom thing, exploring what's wrong with what's around us and within us, and trying to figure out what role we're supposed to play in this shalomic restoration thing. We said that shalom is everything flourishing as it fulfills its design, its purpose. Where people aren't flourishing, where creation isn't flourishing, where relationships aren't flourishing, shalom is lacking. I really wasn't trying to tell you what to do through this episode. Honestly, I wasn't. But beloved, I was trying to irritate your thinking a little bit. When you call up your mental hierarchy of sins, and we all have one, does your list match God's? Or more specifically, of the 5 sins of Sodom, what order do you arrange them? I mean, did you even have 5? You should now, right? You should now. Give some thought to this. It's important to God. You might even start by asking someone today or tomorrow what they think of when they hear the word Sodom. And hopefully they won't say Saddam Hussein, right? But I bet you'll find it to be an excellent conversation starter. Give it a shot. And second, have you ever thought of the poor as a people group before? I mean, when your church talks about unreached people groups, is the poor on that list? I mean, was it a little unnerving to think that our attitudes towards the poor is a reflection of our intimacy with God, whether it's authentic or not? Wow, I mean, that will make you drop your hymnal. Rethinking both of these things, our hierarchy of sins and our view of the poor, in light of the restoration of shalom, is good exercise. At least it is for your soul. I'll see you next time.